Welcome to Breaking Free from Britain, one of the significant effects of the gold rush on Australia's history. Let's have a look at what this just means, and let's have a look at this statement as well. The road to federation. What does the gold rush have to do with Australia's federation? And maybe you don't know what federation means. Well, let's find out. Bit of a review. Lots of gold means more people in Australia. Of course, it means more gold equals more money, which equals wealth. And there's your wealth. And guys, basically, from 1850 onwards, Australia got rich. It got rich, guys. It wasn't rich before, and then it got rich. Okay, so here you've got Australia in about the 1880s, guys, and it's rich. Okay, it's got the dollars, hooray! But there's a few problems. It's actually not all joined together. It's all separated. And I know you can see these lines here. These are the states, of course, the states and the territories, and they're still there today. But back in the 1880s, all right, 1880s, we didn't have one big government. We just had state governments. There was no Tony Abbott or no Julia Gillard leading the nation. There was just different states. We weren't a federation. We were just a bunch of states living together, a bunch of British colonies all squished together, and of course you had your you had Queensland. We all know Queensland, that was there. We had New South Wales, which is of course named after Wales in Britain. Okay, you had Victoria, of course. You had Tasmania. You had South Australia. You had Western Australia. We won't talk too much about the Northern Territory. That wasn't so much a state. That was an entirely different area. So was the ACT. But let's focus on Western Australia, SA, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania. They were all different. And there were a few problems because of this. They weren't all ruled by one government. Okay, they were rich. Everyone had money now, but there was some problems. Okay, each state had their own laws, which is tricky because when you go from one state to another, you don't know if you're breaking the law. Each state had their own type of railway, which is tough because, normally you want a train to go across Australia. You shouldn't have to change there, and change trains there, and change trains there just because the tracks are different, because different states have different tracks. Each state had their own taxes, which was again confusing because who knows what taxes you'd pay when you went from here to there. Each state, well, this is quite a bit of a worry, each state couldn't really defend themselves from attacks from above. And make no doubt, there were some interesting incursions going on above Australia. People did want to take Australia. Up here in New Guinea, that was claimed by the Germans, and the Germans certainly had an eye to come down here and take Australia as well. Now, each state individually can't really defend Australia. That's not going to work. Okay, the states were all concerned about, well, let's put down defence. We better put down that because we talked about that, defence. The states were also concerned about immigration. It's tough to say, but there was a bit of an only white policy going on in Australia for a while, and the states weren't too sure about lots of Chinese people and other types of people who weren't white coming in, and the states were worried they were coming in Queensland, or they were coming in Western Australia, or they were coming in here, and they were going all over the place. So Australia was worried about that. It's a bit of a bad thing to be worried about. It's a bit of a racist policy, but it was the case back then. Okay, so what happened to deal with all these problems? We've got the money, but we don't have the solution to these problems. Well, yes, we do. A decision was made to come together. Australia would no longer just be a disparate bunch of states. It would be, indeed, one country, one Commonwealth, one nation. This, Australia, you see, all chopped up into different colours, different countries, provinces, different areas, would actually become one, would actually become one Australia. What on earth just happened then? I'll get rid of that. I'll try to move this back up. Good, there it is. And where's my Australia gone? There it is. Would actually become one Australia. Now, we'd still have the states, guys. In fact, the states are still there. As you know, you live in New South Wales. That's fine. Okay, you live in New South Wales. But But what we did on January 1901, all the states joined together, right? Joined together, recognised one another, and came together to form the Commonwealth of Australia. The Commonwealth of Australia. Have a look at that. And basically, instead of just having one government here and one government there and one government there, one government there and one government there, we had what is called a federal government as well. One government over everybody. And that's what Tony Abbott does today. One government in charge of the whole of Australia. And that's what federation was about. Okay, so let's just review that. Why did we go to federation? Why did we have federation? Why did we come together? We could afford it. We had the money because of the gold rush. Why also? Well, we had no more convicts, so we're sort of thinking, you know what, what's joining us to Britain anymore? We don't need Britain's money. We don't need their money. We sure don't need any more convicts. In fact, they haven't sent convicts for years. We're not really a convict colony anymore. Why else? Well, we're voting for our own government now. We don't need the Brits at all. Why don't we just federate and become our own country, not just separate colonies of Britain, not separate states of Britain, not like New South Wales from Britain, okay? Let's become our own whole country. As well, we were actually beating the Brits at cricket, and that provided a lot of Aussie pride to the Australians. They're like, well, hang on, are we just a British colony or are we our own country? I mean, if we're beating them at cricket, maybe we're a little bit more than just a colony. Let's continue on with why we federated. We could defend the country as one. And that's a big issue. When you become together as a whole country, you've got Tony Abbott directing which boats go where and which planes go where. Not 6 different states trying to defend Australia at once. It won't work. You can get your resource together and organised. Of course, when we came together, we had one set of rules for our railways. No more did we have crazy train lines. Whoop to Daisy, let's bring him back. No more did we have crazy train lines, but that's a nice little effect. Chugga, 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 chugga. All right. You could have the same taxes and stamps in Australia. You didn't need different taxes for different states anymore, or different stamps for different states. You could be in Western Australia and get taxed the same as in New South Wales. Of course, uniform decisions on immigration there, and I know it's not very popular, but there was a bit of a white-only policy for a while, and of course, when the federal government's making all the decisions instead of just state governments, and remember guys, when I say federal, and that's an important word when you talk about federation, see that, federation, federal government's making all the decisions, they're making decisions for Australia as one, okay, so you could make those decisions on immigration, and of course, it was your own country, it was our own country, we were rich, we didn't need England anymore, we had a bit of pride going on. We wanted to be our own country, so we federated, and we could afford to do it largely because of the gold rush. Now, I've chose to end this video here with just a little picture that sums things up. Here's Australia. You can see it's breaking free. Why is it breaking free? Well, it's breaking free of the hold that Britain had over it. Now, remember, Britain wasn't a bad guy. The Queen wasn't a baddie. But they did have a lot of power over Australia that the gold rush helped to break. Alright? Once we had all this wealth and money and people in our country, we didn't so much need to lean on Britain anymore. We could stand up on our own 2 feet in the world. And we started to do so. And we really did that in Federation, or on the day of Federation, 1901, January the 1st. Okay, that's about 114 years ago today, where Australia, instead of becoming 6 different states, became one country. Still part of the Commonwealth, still part of Britain, but its own country in its own right with its own federal government. And there's the word to remember, federal. Federation, federal. Alright guys, was breaking free from Britain the most important thing that happened because of the gold rush? Something to think about. Thank you for listening.